Hey, I'm Mia Hemstad. I'm a wife, I'm a mom of 2 kids, and I'm a trauma-informed self-care coach. I also live with diagnosed PTSD and depression. I started sharing my mental wellness journey online in 2017 when I was diagnosed with postpartum depression and anxiety. And since then, I've heard from hundreds of women who all struggle with the same thing, putting ourselves last. This is a struggle that's keeping so many women burned out and unhappy, through no fault of our own, by the way. I've been working on my own healing as an abuse survivor since 2013. But when I became a mom, I really started to do the inner work of figuring out why I was putting myself last and how to start prioritizing myself for the first time in my life. This podcast is about sharing all of those lessons with you. So if you're interested in hearing honest stories, life advice, and inspiration that encourages you to make your health, happiness, and well-being a priority, then definitely stick around. Welcome to your No Longer Last journey. Hey everybody, it's Mia. Welcome to the podcast. Thanks for coming back. If you are a returning listener, I'm so proud of myself for making it. For those of you who've been listening for a while, I've been really inconsistent with my podcast, and anytime that I can show up for you and for me, I feel very, very proud. Those of you who live with any sort of chronic pain, chronic illness, depression, anxiety, PTSD, you know how hard it is to do something, even if you really, really, really want to do it, even though you know it's good for you and it makes you happy and all the things. So yes, I'm celebrating my win and I want you to celebrate yours. Seriously, I don't think we do that enough. I think part of it's just because for somebody with depression or anxiety, taking a shower is a big deal, but maybe for a neurotypical, it's not that big of a deal. So we tend to diminish our struggles. But in this space and in this community, we celebrate every single thing, every single thing. So I wanted to start there. But today's episode is exciting because I am going to be talking about 8 things that I have learned since living in Portugal for 1 year. I moved to Portugal in March of 2022. It is now May of 2023. And yeah, I have learned so much since living here. It has fully changed my life to move here. And I'm just so excited to share these things with you. I hope this episode can be encouraging, educational, maybe inspiring, or just if you're curious, maybe it can fulfill that curiosity. But we're going to dive straight into it because there's 8 things to share. I was like, wow, Mia, this is a lot, but I just can't help it. I want to share all the things that I've been learning. So the first thing, and I have my notes as always, because y'all, I have given up the perfectionistic need to like remember everything. So I've got my notes here, right here, if you're watching on video. So the first thing is that Portugal has taught me how important structural and systemic support is. Like through the government, there's a lot of structural support in Portugal. And growing up as an American with Republican/libertarian parents who, didn't really believe in that, paying high taxes, et cetera, I was always taught that, programs through the government are inefficient and not good. But that is a lie. Obviously, a government is only as good as the people running it. And, I don't know the ins and outs of the Portuguese government, but I do know from locals that they have a great public healthcare system, a great public transportation system, and a bunch of other things that run through the government. And yes, that there's problems with it, but from what I'm hearing from locals that I've spoken with, it by and large does work because they've been doing it like this for a long, long time. So what I've learned is that structural support and safety facilitate a kinder community. And what I mean by this is that when you are able to bus to wherever you need to go, because the bus system works super well, when you were able to go to the doctor anytime you are struggling with something or your kid is, or, health-wise, you don't have to sit there and worry that it's going to like bankrupt you and your family, like we have to worry in the United States. Portugal, when I first moved here, when I first applied for a visa, it was ranked as the 4th safest country in the world. And at that time, that was just last year, The United States was ranked like 162 or something crazy. So Portugal is such a peaceful country. And I think part of that is just so many, like, a lot of people's needs are being met. Not every need. I talk to locals and, they express what isn't going right. But they're like, I've talked to some people that were like, I couldn't imagine living in the United States and not being able to go to the doctor or having to worry about that. So I just get this sense that people are able to get to work. People are able to go to the doctor. People feel safe walking down the street. I would walk down the street in Lisbon, a huge city, at night after dark, and I never felt unsafe. And I could never even do that in the States. And I think that overall support system in the government and in these structural systems of transportation and healthcare, along with the safety, makes people feel more at ease. And I think that ease makes people more open and generous and kind, and supportive. And I shared a lot of this in a YouTube video. If you want to know why I left the United States for Portugal, I have a YouTube video that I'll link in the show notes, giving my 5 top reasons why I left. I might return. I don't know. People always ask me. I don't know what the future holds. But some examples of how open and kind this society is here is every time I took the train, people saw that I had small children and they would get up and offer me their seat, or they would help me with my bags. Every time I have looked lost, which was often in the first year that I lived here, people, literally one time I was going to Lisbon and I was just that wide-eyed, like, oh my gosh, am I on the right side of the platform? I'm so nervous. And this guy, I didn't even ask him for help. He gets up and he's just like, are you wondering what train you should be on? And I'm like, yes. And he's just like, oh, the guy working in the office can tell you. And he was like, but if he doesn't speak Portuguese, let me know and I can ask for you. And I didn't even ask this guy for help. And it turns out the person in the office did not speak English. He did not speak English. And so the local Portuguese guy got up and asked, what side of the platform does this lady need to be on? And it was confirmed for me. And just that kind of looking out for one another, that I didn't realize how much that was going to help me feel just at ease. And it's such a beautiful thing about this country that the United States really is lacking in. And I think it's not because the United States doesn't have kind, loving, open-hearted people. It's because so many of us are in survival mode due to a lack of basic needs being met, like healthcare being difficult to access and expensive, like there being no real functional public transportation systems in most of the country. Like, for instance, in Portugal, it's in the law and there are signs posted everywhere that if you are pregnant, have a young child with you, are elderly or disabled, you get priority in line. So one time I was in the back of a customs line when I first arrived here in the country, and I had my 2 very jet-lagged, very exhausted children and my husband. And the customs line was, I kid you not, 400 people long. And this customs agent pointed at us and said, come here. And I was like, what's going on? And I realized that we were in a special line for people who have young kids, pregnant, disabled, elderly. And they were like, you get priority because you have a small child. And they pointed at my daughter, Ellie. And I was like, what is going on? And then they also pointed like, oh, and by the way, you can get a free strollers are over there. And we didn't have a stroller. And it was awful because my daughter was so tired, but I couldn't carry her because we had all these suitcases. And Portugal, the airport had all these strollers. And they have priority for if you have young kids. And so I was in the bank. And again, they were like, you get to skip the line because you have a young kid with you. And it's that kind of, when I say systemic support, it's written into the law. This type of making sure that people are treated well and have their basic needs met is written into the law. And that facilitates this ease and this openness that I think US people don't have. And it breaks my heart because I think that the United States wouldn't be such an aggressive and violent place if people were taken care of better. The next point I want to share, point number 2, is kind of along those lines, and it's how important and protected and normalized paid time off / vacation is here. It is mandated by the law that no matter what kind of job you work, you get 22 working days off every year. 22, in addition to all the public holidays they have. So that is 3 weeks, 22 days of paid time off. It doesn't matter if you work as a doctor or if you work in a restaurant. People get all that time off. It's just it's so normalized here, and you don't realize how much that influences the culture of around rest and rejuvenation. It's not a privilege of the few like it is in the United States. And I felt even in the US when I stopped working like food and beverage jobs and I started working office jobs with PTO, paid time off, I still felt pressure to not take paid time off. There was very much this attitude that if I took paid time off as an entry-level employee, that somehow meant that I wasn't committed to my job. And the messaging was very much, you are a junior associate, you need to pay your dues, you need to work harder than everybody else, you need to show up earlier, you need to leave later. You know, I worked that corporate life when I was pregnant, and I would sleep in my car during my lunch breaks and get back to my desk, because if I didn't have that afternoon nap, I wasn't going to make it from that 1 p.m. to 8 p.m. shift that I would do. I literally would start work at 8, take my nap at noon, and then I would work from 1 to like 7 or 8 p.m. And I did that pregnant, and everybody knew I was pregnant, but it was just like, you have to grind because you are new here. And in Portugal, that mentality, like, at least from what I'm experiencing so far, it's not that way. And I think that a big part of that is the culture, but also the law protecting that in the culture. The law protecting people's right to rest. Like, literally, people have a right to rest. And does that, some people are like, isn't that inconvenient? I mean, sure. Like, in the wintertime where I live, the region where I live, is when a lot of restaurants are closed for 3 weeks or sometimes the whole month. They'll pick a month that they're just closed. And they let everyone just take their break. Honestly, when I see the we're closed for the month of November signs, I'm like, I feel so happy. I feel elated. I feel like I'm in a place that recognizes people's humanity. And it makes me so, so happy. So I absolutely love that. It's taught me something that I think we all need to recognize, which is that the economy will not collapse if people rest. The economy will not collapse if people rest. And in fact, I mean, I'm not an economist, but the euro has more buying power than the United States dollar. Like, when I want to buy something in US dollars with euros, it takes less euros to buy that thing. But if I want to convert my money from US to euros, get less euros when I convert it over. So I think it's fascinating that the United States is teaching all of us that if we take a break, that everything will fall apart. But in Europe, it's very common for people to take 6 weeks off in the year, and like their euro is doing better. Their buying power is stronger. So maybe an economist will end up in my email inbox and tell me that I'm wrong, but you know what? I can convert my money every single month, and the euro seems to be winning. So that has completely changed my approach to rest in a cellular level. I mean, I just value rest and leisure time so much more thanks to Portugal. And I just hope that can pass on to you and let you know that, like, I know it's hard when culturally the people around you don't value rest in the same way, but I just want you to know that there are entire countries that do, and they function great. So, try to be more shameless in taking your rest and protecting that right to rest. The third thing I wanted to share is that having a slow and spacious lifestyle is just as important for my health and well-being as therapy and medication. So a lot of you know that I have PTSD and major depressive disorder, and I have exhausted a lot of different treatment options to get myself stable. And it's been a really exhausting and long journey. And moving to Portugal was part of that push to like try to help myself heal, because I've been through a lot of abuse and things like that. And I just was like, I mean, I've struggled with a lack of safety. And yeah, I was just like, I can't live like this. I have 2 children to raise. I have things I want to do in my life. I want to enjoy my life. I don't want to be haunted by my trauma forever. So it's been really cool to recognize that
and learn that treatment, like my treatment plan, is not just medication and therapy. It also has to include a lot of lifestyle changes, and having a slow and spacious life helps with that so much. So what I mean by that is, in general, the Portuguese culture is very, very slow. Like, for instance, I was going to go to a car dealership today to check out some cars. I'm thinking of buying a car, and they're closed on Sundays. I mean, we're talking like an official dealership, and I did not think that they would be closed on Sundays. They are closed on Sundays. In fact, it's very common for places to be closed on Sundays. It's very common for lunch and dinner restaurants to close between 2 and 5 p.m. They're just closed. And you have to really check the hours here. It kind of creates this environment where everything is very like just slower pace. Like there's no point in rushing anywhere, because you might get there and they'll be closed and you have to wait anyway. Oftentimes I'll arrive at school events 5 minutes late or something, and they'll be like, "Oh no, you're early. You're on Portuguese time." And I'll be like, "Oh, right. Okay." In general, I just find that I have the privilege of taking things slower here. I'm not as rushed here. And the spaciousness that I'm talking about is just referring to, I'm not overscheduled anymore. I felt like in the United States, like there was always like something to do and somewhere to be. And here it's my life is what I like to call delightfully uneventful. And I'm really enjoying it. I'm really enjoying all of that space. So what do I do with all that space? Well, I do my 10 minutes of yoga, 5 minutes of meditation. When I do those two things together in the morning, that sets my day up for success. I drink my coffee without scrolling my phone because I quit Instagram. So now I have a very mindful coffee in the mornings. And again, that's like 5 minutes. So like, it sounds like not that much, but it really just helps me to have time to myself and to just check in before I pour out all day. I journal more. I definitely am working on making this a more consistent practice, but it's amazing the wonders that can be worked when you just actually put pen to paper and ask yourself how you're really doing. So that's been beautiful to have space for that. I also have time to watch TV. And I know that sounds silly, but I just didn't have time before to really watch TV and to watch movies. Like I really love film and just like acting and writing in general. And to have the time to watch, for instance, I watched The Fabelmans the other day. It's a beautiful movie directed by Steven Spielberg, the greatest director of all time. And it's a 2.5-hour film, and I got to take the time to watch that and revel in that. And it's such a beautiful film. And I have more time to connect with my husband one-on-one. I have more time to connect with my kids and actually really play with them. And I have energy to do that. And that has been such a healing thing. So, Portugal has shown me that is possible if you live a slow and spacious life. And that by designing your life to be intentionally slow and spacious, you are giving yourself the opportunity to make the lifestyle choices that help you heal. To do the exercise, to do the meditation, to take the longer shower, to journal, to spend time with your loved ones, like the things that help you feel better. I remember I was going through a bout of like really not feeling well, even on meds. And I called my psychiatrist and I told him what was going on. And, it was so interesting. He was asking me about all my lifestyle habits, which no psychiatrist has ever done. He was like, well, are you exercising? How's your diet? Are you getting sunlight every day? Are you leaving the house? And it turned out I was working on a lot of different client projects at the same time. I talked about this in my life update episode, which was the last one. It was a really hectic couple of months for me, and not surprisingly, my sleep was suffering. And he was just like, I'm not going to up your dose just yet. I really want you to work on those other lifestyle self-care practices, basically. I can't remember what he called it, just like lifestyle changes. He said, because that's a part of your mental health care. He was like, not just upping this dose. And I really, really, I never have heard a United States psychiatrist tell me that. They not only do they up my dose, they usually give me 2 more drugs to put me on. And there was a time I was on so many meds and I got so sick from them. It was bad. So it was fascinating hearing this doctor tell me this. And so I was like, okay. So I started to really focus on like my sleep, my exercise, my eating, getting out of the house every day and spending time with my kids. Because when I don't feel right. And it made me feel so much better. And so he had a follow-up with me. He's like, how are you doing? I'm like, I'm feeling a lot better. And he was just like, I am so glad to hear that. We don't need to up your dose. So that's something that Portugal has taught me. you can't, unfortunately, therapy and medication alone cannot solve all my problems. I also have to be really, I have to have a life that gives me the opportunity to practice self-care. And obviously, self-care is very important to me. It's the mission of my entire brand. But I also constantly acknowledge and tell my clients, hey, if you're not able to meet your self-care goals, it's not because you're bad at time management. It's because you don't have time to manage. And so obviously not everyone can up and leave the country, but I just really encourage you to look at your life and see where you can be ruthless in uprooting things that you just don't have time for anymore. And that could even be a temporary pause to something that you were committed to, or it could be a permanent removal of something, whether that's a relationship or a commitment. I have changed careers. I used to want to go into the film industry, work 16-hour days on sets. But after I had my first child, I realized that was not feasible and my health was suffering. And I was like, I need to go into marketing and communications that have consistent hours, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that we need to take our power back and we need to do whatever we can to design lives that are slow and spacious if we want to have more time to take care of ourselves, because that is a part of mental health care. So I've beaten that one to death. Let's move on to number 4. Actually, before I move on to number 4, in the next batch of what I've learned, I want to take a quick break and we will be right back.
Have you ever gotten a little time to take care of yourself and then you're instantly overwhelmed with what the heck you should do first? Yeah, I used to feel that way too. I call that self-care overwhelm, which leads to decision fatigue and results in you not taking care of yourself in the way that you really need to feel nourished and filled up. This used to be a constant problem for me back when I had my second baby, and that's when I created the 4B self-care framework to help my exhausted mom brain figure out what I needed to do to take care of myself with the small pockets of time and energy that I had. In this framework, there are 4 types of self-care: basic, boring, brilliant, and bougie. In my new mini course, I teach you about these 4 types of self-care. I show you how to prioritize, and I give you a printable to plan out your self-care over a 30-day period to help you go on your own journey of self-discovery to figure out what you really need to feel healthy, happy, and taken care of. You can get this mini course completely for free on my website at miahemstad.com/course. I'll have it linked in the show notes as well. Alrighty, so the next thing that I've learned is that eating is something worth taking a break for and worth being present for. The Portuguese have taught me the value of sitting your butt down and eating your food. It was a very strange culture shock for me when I would go out and order a coffee and it would always come in a glass cup. And I remember one time I was in a rush to catch the metro and I hadn't had my morning coffee. I had recently arrived in Portugal. It had been only maybe 1 week and I ordered a coffee and it came in a glass cup. And I was like, do you have a takeaway cup? Thinking that I was going to walk with my coffee and sip it and take it on the metro. And the guy looked at me full on like I was crazy. He was like, what? I'm like, a takeaway cup? And he was just like, no, we don't have takeaway cups for coffee. And some people might be hearing this like, there's takeaway cups. Yes, in Lisbon, they have a lot of coffee shops have adapted for Western tourists who always want to be on the go. However, most places do not have takeaway. And if they do, the law requires that they charge you extra for it because Portugal takes waste very seriously. They take recycling very seriously. There's even clothing recycling bins like in city center, and in malls. They don't just let you throw things away here. So I basically have fully adjusted to the fact that if I'm going to get a coffee, I'm going to sit down for 10 minutes and I'm going to consume it while it's hot and I'm going to drink it till it's done and then I pay and then I leave. The takeaway coffee
is not a thing here. And so that has slowly trickled into even like when I eat. Like you order something, it comes on a plate, it comes in a dish, and you like real glassware and real metalware. And like you don't, like, if you ask for takeaway, again, like you have to pay for it. So you're just like, why am I going to pay an extra euro for takeaway? I'm just going to sit here and eat this. And so that plus, quitting Instagram, I have been eating more mindfully. And now that has trickled into my home where instead of like eating while I work, I just fully close my computer and I take a solid 45-minute lunch break. And I take the time to prepare my lunch. And I have a little sunroof upstairs in my little townhome. And I bought a table and chairs. And I go up there and I eat my lunch in the sun with the blue sky above me and the ocean view. And yes, I know I'm so privileged and lucky to have that. I feel so grateful. And yes, there are many days where I feel like all of my deadlines and deliverables are looming over me. And I feel like I don't have time for 45 minutes. But I don't know, the Portuguese have just taught me that we eat 3 times a day. This is a moment to just like appreciate like the food in front of you and your life around you, and to look up from the work that you're doing to just enjoy being alive. And that has been a really beautiful learning experience. And I was in DC recently, Virginia, DC area for work just a week or two ago. And I ordered breakfast. I ordered a bacon avocado toast. And it came in a to-go container with plastic. And I was like, I didn't order to go. But I noticed they were giving everybody to go. And I ordered a cappuccino and it came in a disposable with a plastic lid. I mean, at least some coffee shops, they don't put the plastic lid in case you plan on drinking it there and they're just trying to reduce dishes. But it came with a plastic lid. And every time I ordered anything, it was just like anytime I ordered anything in that area, it was just like everything was to go. And I was just like, what? So it just made me realize how much the United States is like, doesn't care that much about not throwing things out and reducing waste. And also that everyone there, the customer base there is very much on the go, especially in that area. It was very close to DC. And what's funny is as I was sitting there eating my food out of my disposable container, this guy who got coffee was talking to someone and he was like, why is there no sleeve on my coffee cup? And she was like, oh, they're probably trying to save the environment. And he was like, do I look like somebody who cares about the environment? And she was like, haha, no. And then he was like, can I have a sleeve? And he went and got a sleeve. And I was like, wow, I am in America. Like this was, I was like, I'm fully here. Yep. This is not Portugal anymore. So that was interesting. And I just realized how much I actually really appreciate like having things in regular cups and dishes and sitting and enjoying my food. So beautiful lesson I've learned that has taught me like the importance of slowing down on a regular basis 3 times a day when I eat. So that's been really, really good. The 5th thing that I've learned is that people work to live. They do not live to work. I heard this before from Europeans, and they say it in that TV show, Emily in Paris, which I love that show. They're like, oh, you Americans, you live to work, but we only work to live. And the whole point of that mantra or philosophy is like, work is just one little piece of your life that you do to pay your bills. And that's pretty much it. It's not supposed to define who you are and like why you live and, just like all of these things. And I definitely, starting my career off in the corporate space, I learned to live to work. I mean, I literally lived at work. I mean, I slept in my car in the parking garage at work. I ate dinner at work. I ate lunch at work. I had all my snacks at work. Sometimes I had breakfast at work. And I would often, almost 90% of the time, eat at my desk. So I was very much had that philosophy like in my DNA by that point. And it's been how many years? 7 or 8 years since I left college. So I very much have that philosophy embedded in me. And then I come to Europe where people take 6 weeks off and it doesn't mean anything about their commitment to their job. And people, they just value living. Like, it's just like they just value taking their breaks. And I just really appreciated that. And one thing I wanted to share that is a way of protecting that right to living your life here is it's actually illegal for your employer to communicate with you via phone, text, or email after normal working hours. And that law passed, I believe, in 2020 or 2021, but it's illegal. I think in France, it's illegal to talk about work when you're not at work. And I know some people in America might think that's absolutely crazy, but I think it's such a beautiful way to use the legal system as a tool to protect people's right to life. To not make work seep into every part of your life. And I really loved that aspect of not being communicated with. I remember one time when I started my corporate job, my supervisor texted me on a Saturday morning to give me feedback that he was disappointed in me about something on a Saturday morning. So the whole weekend, and I had just started this job, it was my first corporate job. I was so worried. At this point, my husband was unemployed. I was, recently pregnant. I needed this job for health insurance. And I was so scared that I was like going to lose this job because I was like kind of in a probation period. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm in trouble. And I'm so scared and I was so stressed. And it really made me so anxious the whole weekend. I was feeling sick to my stomach. And it's like I'm putting all this stress on my baby that's in my womb right now. It was horrible. And it's like, why couldn't my supervisor just wait until Monday and tell me in person and let me explain like why I left 5 minutes early, which is what he's angry at me about. Yeah, in Portugal, it's illegal for that to happen. It's illegal to be communicated with by your employer or anyone work related outside of working hours. So that is one way that I think Portugal embodies the we do not live to work, we work to live philosophy. And I really have learned a lot from that. And I try to make sure that even though I work for United States clients, that I still embody like, hey, my time with my family is protected, my time on the weekend is protected, and my time after working hours is protected. And it benefits both of us. It makes me a better worker and it protects my health. So yeah, that's something I've been learning. Number 6 is that worry and lack of safety were keeping me chronically ill. Portugal was ranked 4th safest in the world. I think right now they're 5th safest. United States is like down there in the hundreds, like 160th safest in the world or something crazy like that. I can't remember the exact number. You'll have to look it up. But Portugal is really up there when it comes to safety. And until you go out of the United States for an extended period of time, you don't realize how much you are worrying about your safety, especially if you are a person of color. And you are consuming news about the hate crimes that are happening, the racialized hate crimes, that, you start to think about every single day. Like for instance, and some people might be like, oh, well, it's just the news. Just don't read the news. So even though I was really getting good at like filtering my news, for example, there was a child, trigger warning, gun violence. There was a child who was the same age as my son at the time. He was 5 years old. He was on his way to school in the back of his mom's car in his car seat. A stray bullet from 2 crazy people that were shooting at each other on the freeway went into the back of the car and shot him, killed him dead in the back of the car. I can't imagine being a mother thinking I'm dropping my kid off at kindergarten and hearing a loud noise and looking to the back and seeing that my son is dead. Because this was kind of like a hit and run in a way, the people who killed him were on the run. Like they basically got away with it for several weeks. Nobody could find them. So and this was right down the street from where I lived. Okay. So the entire city where I lived was putting up banners and posters about this child that was killed saying, we need to find his murderers. Have you seen these people? And they actually had photos of the people. So I was eating brunch one day and like I look and like there's like almost every business has this sign up, which I'm so glad that this city like cared this much that the whole community was getting involved in finding these murderers. But that's just to say that when people try to dismiss your worry about gun violence and they say that it's just like you overly worrying because you're consuming too much news, like this stuff is happening close to home. And this was the 3rd crazy shooting that happened just near where I lived, within a 10-mile radius. So it was very close to home and it really motivated me to find a way to leave the country. And I've been here a year and let me tell you, it took a full year before my body fully started to like decompress from all that chronic stress. Something that I do not and will not ever take for granted is that when I drop my kids off at school, I don't worry about their safety. There isn't one moment where I'm worried about their safety. I know that they're going to be okay. And I remember I was recently talking with somebody who's Portugal native, Portugal local, and he was just like, I've never seen a gun in my whole life. He's like, it's so wild to me that so many citizens in your country have guns and can have guns and can shoot other people. Like, it's wild. He can't even fathom it. And I grew up in Guam and I never saw a gun either. Like, maybe on a police officer once or twice, but like, I literally never saw guns either. So you have to understand, like, this isn't normal for me. And it felt so deeply uncomfortable and deeply worrying and troublesome. And so now that I've been away from it for a year, I can honestly say with confidence that not having that chronic worry in my system has contributed so much to my healing. You know, I was working with a doctor that was helping with me with a lot of my chronic health conditions. And she was like, you can't act, she was like, you know, I need to be clear with you that you're not going to actually heal. And it doesn't matter how many supplements or treatments we do. Your body's not going to take it until you are out of survival mode. She was like, you are in chronic fight or flight. You need to be in rest and digest. And you are constantly stressed. You are constantly worried. You're constantly afraid. And therapy and medication were not removing the threat of gun violence. Okay. And it made it very clear to me that I can spend thousands of dollars on treatments and medicines and stuff. But until I feel safe, until I can exit survival mode and fight or flight, my body cannot cannot improve. So it has helped me a lot. And I'm so deeply grateful to this country for allowing me to be here and for being a society where people can be safe. And one of the things that makes me the most sad about the United States is how normalized gun violence is, how normalized it is. And I think parents have to deal with that weight more than anybody else in society. So yeah, very, very heartbreaking. All right, that was a heavy one. So we're going to take a quick break and finish off with two more things I've learned. We'll be right back.
Did you know I send a weekly letter? It's called the No Longer Last Weekly Letter, and it's a super helpful resource you can get for free where I share journal prompts, mental health resources, encouragement, and updates about new podcast episodes, YouTube videos, and new products and offerings. People who sign up for my weekly letter also get special promotions and offers I don't share anywhere else. If you want a free weekly resource to help you make your health, happiness, and well-being a priority, then definitely sign up for the No Longer Last Weekly Letter. Go to miahemstad.com/letter to sign up today. I'll also link to this in the show notes. All right, the last two are much lighter, thankfully. The seventh one is sunlight entering my home and how important it is for my health and well-being. I had no idea that living in an apartment in California, sunny Southern California, but living in an apartment where I wasn't getting much natural light at all, like my kitchen and living room space had no windows. I only had some light that enters through the bedrooms, which I'm only in at night when it's dark. So I basically didn't have any natural light in this apartment that I lived in for 2 years. And I think that had a profound effect on my depression, and on my anxiety. I really need a lot of sun to function and to feel my batteries be charged and to feel healthy and happy. I grew up on an island. My mother is also an islander. She's from the Caribbean islands. I need sun. And I live in a townhome with tons of big glass doors and lots of light come in all day long. And I have a little sunroof. So any time of the day that I want even more sun and even more direct heat, I can go upstairs and lay in my hammock and get sun. And I eat almost all my meals upstairs. One of the things that helps me with my sleep is getting light exposure between 8 and 9 a.m., which is scientifically proven to stop the production of melatonin, which helps a lot if you struggle with sleep and regulating your circadian rhythms. So I highly recommend it. So I have my coffee up there. It has made a huge difference. And I wanted to bring this up, even though it sounds kind of, I don't know, not as cool maybe to some people, just in case you're like struggling like I was with your depression and anxiety and whatever else you're dealing with, and you're at the beginning of your journey and you have no idea where to start when it comes to helping you sleep better or feel better. Maybe try like living somewhere that has more sun. Like
I know not everyone can up and move, but if it's going to make you function and feel better every day, I think you're worth that move. I think you're worth, like I said, I've changed careers and so has my husband, and it wasn't an easy sacrifice, and we took a major financial hit and all of the things, but your health and your happiness are more important than your career. And that's my hot take. And yeah, so that's been huge. And also living near water, living specifically near the ocean. I loved living on the island I lived on, to be honest. I grew up on Guam. It's a very tiny island, but I loved living near the ocean. I could see the ocean from my house every day, which is not hard to do when you're on a tiny island. But that point being is that I needed that connection with the ocean again. And so I can see the ocean I can see the Atlantic from my townhome, and it really makes me feel so much better. So don't underestimate how much your environment can affect how you feel and how it affects your mental health. And we all know that vitamin D from the sun and from supplements, but especially from sunlight exposure, is really important for your mental health and your physical health. So yeah, getting that back in my life has been a game changer. So I learned that about myself since moving to Portugal. And the last thing I wanted to share is how important being able to afford like your lifestyle. So in Portugal, I'm very lucky to have a very affordable cost of living. And I say I am very lucky because obviously cost of living is relative and not everybody earns the same or has the same needs. So for me and my family, Portugal has been the perfect fit for us in terms of finances. I'm able to send my kids to private school, something I never would have been able to do in California on my salary and kind of what my abilities are as somebody with chronic illness. And I'm able to buy the types of foods that I need, being gluten-free without it like breaking my bank, because the food here is very affordable. And health insurance for a family of 4, we have private health insurance, is only $150 a month. Okay. In California, our health insurance was costing us a little over $2,000 a month for a family of 4. And when we used the health insurance, our copay was like $100 a visit. And it almost never covered anything. So for instance, like my son had a very small procedure and it cost us $800. Like it was just astronomically expensive, very cost prohibitive, very stressful, and financial stress, especially for someone who has been through a lot of money trauma like I have. Financial stress, not only is it triggering for me and it reminds me of a very horrible past that I've lived through, we all know like financial stress contributes to marriages ending. It contributes to, people not having their basic needs met, which can cause a bunch of problems. So I just, I hope nobody underestimates. I hope you listening, like if you're wondering how you can make your life easier, like living somewhere where you can actually afford it rather than trying to keep up with the Joneses is really good for your mental health. And it's not like I was trying to keep up with the Joneses living in Orange County. I was very much like, we were there because that's where my husband got his first like job after his master's program. And then I got a job there. It was kind of like a locationally dependent thing. But now that I've been able to switch careers and only work remotely, I'm able to work wherever. And yeah, I just think it's really important to just make sure that you're not living in a certain place because it's just where you've always lived, or it's just because you're stuck in a job and you're like, oh, well, I make a decent pay here and I kind of don't want to like leave this job and have to learn something new. Just really assess how much your cost of living is putting stress on you and see if it's worth it to uproot and go somewhere else and place roots somewhere new, for the sake of improving your quality of life in your day-to-day. So yeah, that's the last thing that I wanted to share with you that I've learned since living here, or that I've experienced since living here. I know I've highlighted all the amazing things. Doesn't mean that my life doesn't have, everyday regular challenges. I work full time and I run this podcast, and I run my coaching program, and I'm a mother of 2 small children. But I have to say that moving and making all of these choices, changes, sacrifices has helped me to handle working full time, running this business, having children, and dealing with my own chronic illnesses and all of the above. It has given me more capacity to live my life and live it more fully. And I'm very grateful to that. And I'm so grateful to live here in this country. And it's so, interesting. I've made several videos about moving to Portugal, why I left or what I love about it. And I was worried that people, specifically Portuguese, might be like, oh, like, get out of this country. Why are you here? Like kind of the way Americans are toward immigrants. I didn't know what to expect. And 99.99%, I'm serious, I think only one person out of the hundreds that I've commented on my videos have said to me, oh my goodness, what you have went through in the US sounds terrible. Welcome to our beautiful country. I'm so proud that Portugal has been kind to you. I'm so happy that Portugal is what you were hoping for. I'm so happy that Portugal can be a good place for you. Welcome, like welcome, welcome, welcome. People have been so kind and welcoming to me and my family. And again, speaks to how generous people are here. So I'm really grateful for that. If you've made it to the end of this episode, I hope you found it inspiring or answered some of your questions. People have been emailing me and asking if I still do Portugal offerings. I no longer do the group Q&A, but I do offer one-on-one consultation. So if you are interested, I'll leave a link to my one-on-one Portugal chats if you'd like to ask me more individual questions. But one thing I wanted to share with you that's really, really exciting is for this month of May, it's been a while since I've done this, I am doing a special promotion on my coaching program, The No Longer Last Journey. And if you don't know what The No Longer Last Journey is, it is my signature 12-month coaching program where I walk you through month by month an entire journey of self-awareness and self-care and self-connection and self-compassion. And you go through this journey over a whole year because it takes time to actually facilitate change in your life. And there's group coaching calls and you get access to me in a private group and all of the good things. And there's lots of really good client testimonials and everything on my website. So I will leave a link to that in the show notes. And I'm doing a special promotion since it's May, it's Mental Health Month. And Mother's Day is coming up, so you can use code MOM, M-O-M, to get $75 off the whole program. So it's not a subscription, it's a program that you pay for, and once you pay for it, you own it for life. So it's not like something that you pay for forever. So you are getting a really big discount to celebrate May. This month is really important. It's a time for us all to acknowledge that mental health is real, that mental health is important, and that it's something worth investing in and taking really good care of. So I will leave all the details to that in the show notes as well. Thank you so much for sticking with me and for watching this episode / listening to this episode. And I will see you next time. Bye.